Hi everybody, it's chapter 3. Z89 woke with the noise of the daily garment drawer clicking open. She didn't want to look. She couldn't cope with another grey. She knew it wouldn't be blue. That was very rare. Please let it be white, she whispered to herself. Reaching across tentatively, she pulled out a white t-shirt, white leggings and white underwear. She breathed in deeply as though the air being pumped into her pod was sweet nectar. No experiments today, no pain, no investigations. She shuddered at the memories of what she'd endured, the constant prodding and poking and measuring, the injections that caused stomach cramps, being left in the dark for 12 hours with nothing to do, nothing to eat or drink. Each time the orderlies would explain patiently what they were doing. They said it was all to help understand the teenage mind. Whatever it was all about, she had to put up with it. Z89 quickly showered and dressed. She knew by the digital clock in the wall she had 5 minutes until the bell summoned them all for their first meal of the day. Sitting on the bed and sliding her hand into the crack, her fingers searched and found the hidden pencil. She pulled a tiny piece of paper from under the mattress and began to write. A memory, a sweet memory, softness and light. My first taste of strawberries and cream. Another memory of sound, laughter and joyful voices. When will I hear that again? She began to fold the paper once, twice, again and again until a tiny paper boat materialised, just like the nice man with kind eyes had shown her. Her memories held tightly into the folds. Without warning, the window of her pod clicked and glided to the open position. At the same time, a strident bell rang out. Time to go. Z89 squeezed the tiny boat and pencil into the crack between the bed and the shower wall, then turned and made her way calmly through the gaping space and down the ladder. She joined the line of girls. Most were like herself in white, others smiling in blue, and a few looking anxious in grey. No one spoke. They all knew the consequences. They walked along a brightly lit corridor to the nourishment sector. There they collected their food and then stood behind their stalls while the loudspeakers played soothing music. 5 boys and 5 girls stood to attention round each of the tables. A voice broke into the soft cadences of the note. You are one being, you belong here, you are loved. We are one being, we belong here, we are loved. The young people spoke monotonously. They repeated it all 3 times and the music returned. They sat and began to eat. Butterfly. 2 days before her birthday, Erin was in her room listening to music on her phone. She'd asked for a new one for her birthday, hoping to get the new iPhone as this one was on its way out. Erin jabbed her finger on the screen, but Ed Sheeran's voice was disappearing and then the screen went black. Brilliant, she said out loud, flinging the useless phone into a pile of stuffed toys sitting in a corner, waiting to be remembered. Erin lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling, gold and silver stars glittering down. Her mum and dad decorated the room only last summer. One dark blue wall, Midnight Message it was called in the paint chart, and the other 3 in a soft dove grey. The blue curtains continued the star theme and festooned the ceiling to floor windows that overlooked their garden. There was a small Juliet balcony where she could stand and breathe when life got too much, but Romeo never appeared. She giggled at the thought of Shay climbing up the wall to her balcony. He'd probably break his neck. He deserved to. Shay. A sudden image of him, sitting in her English class, speaking the lines of Romeo as her friend Willow recited the part of Juliet. Erin, of course, was reading The Nurse. She never got the glamorous roles. She loved him from afar, watching him eating lunch with his mates, watching him play football on the top playground, watching him cycling home on his BMX. And now he wasn't talking to her because she had asked him out and he said he wasn't interested. How embarrassing. What a mess. A sudden noise came from her soft toys, making her glance across to an enormous grey plush elephant surrounded by teddies, a wolf cub and various rabbits. "Okay, which one of you did that?" Erin asked them accusingly. Their lifeless eyes stared back at her. Then the wolf cub began to vibrate. "It was you, Xander," Erin exclaimed, snatching up her phone that was nestled in his paws. It was working again. "Doing anything?" Petra had texted. Erin leaned against the elephant and replied, "Bored." "Out shopping with Mum. Want to meet later?" "Yes, 7:30 at usual place." "See you then." Thank goodness for Petra, Erin thought to herself. She keeps me sane. Erin stabbed at the music app, seeing as her phone had decided to come back from the dead, but there was nothing. I wonder if Mum has got me that new phone. Everyone is out. Mum and Dad are still at work. Malachi is at his friend's house. I could go and have a look. They're not going to be here for my actual birthday, so what does it matter when I have the phone? Erin left her room and quickly made her way across the wide landing and climbed the stairs to the top floor to her parents' room. She flicked her long black hair over her shoulder as she pushed open the door to their split-level suite of rooms, crossed over the slate floor of their open-plan ensuite, and climbed the glass steps to their sleeping area. Mum wasn't very imaginative when it came to hiding things. Erin smiled, remembering her dad finding her one Christmas in the huge walk-in wardrobe, surrounded by Christmas paper and playing with her new dolls. He made her wrap them all up again, and she had to pretend on Christmas Day it was all a surprise, just to keep her mum happy. Becoming a teenager seemed to make presents smaller and more rectangular, and consequently were much harder to find. She slid open the door to the walk-in wardrobe, crammed full of designer clothes, shoes displayed on wooden racks, handbags nestled inside cotton bags, various drawers with clear glass fronts so their contents were easily found. The room smelt of her mother's favourite perfume, Chanel No. 5. For a moment that evocative smell made Erin feel guilty about being there in her mum's private space, but then she remembered about the phone. She won't mind, Erin told herself. Erin began by sifting through the many shoe boxes her mum had stacked. Nothing. Then she opened all the suitcases, packed and ready for their trip away. Still nothing. Damn, she thought. Mum's getting better at hiding stuff. Finally, she pushed her way through the many coats and dresses and found some boxes, all with different patterns covering them, neatly piled up behind several art canvases. They were well hidden under several throws and cushions. Perhaps these were her birthday presents. Erin sat down on the cream-carpeted floor and shoved the canvases to one side. There were 3 boxes, graduating in size from the top to the bottom. She pulled the top one onto her lap. The box was about 10 centimetres square, with a swirly pink and blue pattern. She lifted the lid and saw pale pink tissue paper. Erin swallowed. She shouldn't be doing this. But something inside her made her want her to look further. She carefully parted the tissue paper. Perhaps Mum had bought her the bracelets she'd seen in the window of Le Ciel Bleu. Nestled in the paper were tiny baby booties, yellow silk with lacy ribbons. Oh, she thought, lifting them out, these must have been mine. How sweet. Erin stroked the silk tenderly. Mum's kept these all this time. She felt a sudden warmth envelop her like a hug. She gently folded them back up again and carefully replaced the lid. The larger second box beckoned now. Perhaps there was more stuff from when she was a baby. Erin opened the box. The pattern on the lid was of peacock feathers, vibrant blues and greens. Inside were several smaller boxes and bags. One had a baby's tooth, another contained a lock of blonde hair, yet another held a pink lacy hat, and the fourth a miniature silver bracelet. Erin smiled as she encircled 2 of her fingers with the tiny circlet. These were all hers. How could she have been that small to wear these things? She knew from baby photos and what her parents had told her that she'd been very small and underweight when she'd been born, and her mum had been very poorly for a long while afterwards. Erin carefully placed all the items back in the box and covered them with the lid. Now for the third box. This one was much bigger and covered in a pattern of brightly coloured butterflies. Erin loved butterflies. Her mind returned to a time when she was about 6 and Mal was 8, and Grandma and Grandad had given them a special butterfly house made of net. They had begun with tiny eggs on the leaves, then they turned into chrysalises, and finally they watched the butterflies emerge and perch onto a thin branch Erin had placed inside the net, drying their wings. The day they let them go was a sad one for Erin, but she knew they had to be free. Living things needed freedom and light. Without that, they would die. Her father explained it very carefully to her. So the whole family had gone out to the garden on a summer's day and let the butterflies fly free. It was an extraordinary sight, watching them tumbling about in the warm air, like colourful snowflakes dancing on air. Some landing on flowers, others flying high into the trees, and one landing on Erin's outstretched hand. For a moment the butterfly stayed perfectly still, its iridescent wings shining in the sunshine, before taking off and joining the others. Now, sitting here surrounded by her mother's beautiful designer clothes, Erin opened the box. No tissue paper or tiny boxes this time, just a cream leather photograph album. The cover held a pattern embossed in silver, M.E. Erin traced her finger over the curling, swirling lines, an M and an E. Malachi and Erin. Her mum loved family photographs, and she'd covered the walls of their house with many frames holding their many memories. Erin gingerly took out the box. Opening the book, she felt a tingling in her fingers. The first page held a picture of Erin sitting on a sheepskin rug, smiling her goofy baby smile. The next, a year later, as a toddler, standing next to a giant book of fairy stories and a rocking horse. And Erin didn't remember any of these, but she was only young at the time, so that didn't surprise her too much. But as she progressed through the album, she found pictures of herself at different ages in places she didn't remember visiting. Rome, Paris, New York. Surely she'd have remembered New York, but the caption said 4 years old. Erin decided she must have forgotten. How could she forget being by the Empire State Building? She'd have to ask her parents if they could go back there. As she turned more pages, she felt an increasing feeling of apprehension. Here she was in South Africa. There she was smiling at the camera in Japan, and yet another of her in Iceland. Erin and her family travelled widely, but this was becoming more and more weird. She didn't remember any of this. Erin finally came to the end. The caption said 14 years old, last year. And there she was, standing in front of the Taj Mahal. What the? When was this taken? Who took the picture? Erin's contemplations were rudely interrupted by a slam of the front door and heavy footsteps on the stairs. She hurriedly returned the album and boxes, piling them up as before and hiding them with the blankets, cushions and canvases. "Erin!" a deep voice shouted up. "Where are you?" Erin breathed a sigh of relief. It was just her big brother, Mal. Erin came out of her hiding place and descended the glass steps. As she came down the main stairs, she grinned at seeing her tall, dark-haired brother stretched out on one of the sofas, one leg over the arm and the other trailing on the floor. "There you are, sis," he looked across at her. "What have you been up to? You look as guilty as hell." "Nothing, just chilling, that's all." She flung herself down onto the sofa opposite. "You've been looking for prezzies, haven't you? You've been squidging." Mal knew her too well. "I have not," she stormed back, throwing a cushion across at him. "So why are you blushing?" he threw back at her. Erin reached for the TV remote and spent some time punching in numbers. The screen jumped from one image to another in quick succession. Nothing she wanted to watch. Turning it off, She let out a deep sigh. Mal? Yeah. Mal was studying his phone now and grinning inanely at the screen. Probably a picture his stupid friend sent him, Erin thought unkindly. Do you remember going to New York? Erin asked. Yeah. He continued to stare at his screen. Erin sat up straight in the chair. Really? How old were you? Did I go too? Mal looked at her. You came with us, but you were only little. Don't you remember going? Why? I don't remember anything. What about Rome, Iceland, Japan? Erin rattled off various places. I don't know why Mum and Dad bothered taking you anywhere, Erin. Of course we have. Don't you remember anything? Well, what about the Taj Mahal? We haven't been to India, have we? This was her trump card. We went on that film studio tour and you had a picture taken in front of a mural of the Taj Mahal. Blimey, Erin, get a grip. What's the matter with you? Erin stood up. Nothing. As she left the room, Mal suddenly called out, I'm only kidding. We haven't been to Japan or Iceland. I think I'd have remembered going there. Erin felt the ice sliding down her spine again, but this time the cold remained, making her shiver. She turned back and looked at him. Are you sure? When he didn't reply, she strode over to him and grabbed his phone. Hey, what you doing? Mal, this is important. I found some pictures of me, taken in all of those places we've never been to. Yeah, right. I did. OK, so where are these so-called pictures of you? Erin sat down on the coffee table and described what she'd found. She told him of the birthday dates too. She could tell he didn't believe her by the way he looked at her. What do you think it all means, Mal? I'm sure your imagination is just going crazy, sis. You watch too much rubbish. There'll be a perfectly logical explanation for it all. Just like Petra, Mal had a practical head on his shoulders. Come and look then, if you don't believe me. Erin stood up purposefully, just as the front door opened and their parents bowled in, shouting hellos. She grinned. I'll show you another time. Erin continued into the hallway where her dad hugged her. Her mother had already disappeared into the kitchen with the bags of shopping. Erin climbed the stairs and looked back at her dad as he hung his green suede jacket in the coat cupboard. He loosened his tie and kicked off his work shoes and started to pad off into the kitchen. Patrick paused and glanced up at Erin. Hey, Princess, what's up? Nothing, Dad. She turned back up the stairs and took them two at a time to reach her room. Once there, she stood at the window. Dad wouldn't lie to me, would he? Should I talk to him as well as Malachi? I don't know what to do. Things were all jumbled up in her head. While pressing her forehead against the cool glass, eyes misting with tears, dark shadows danced around the 7 stones in the field beyond. These shadows of the long, distant past reflected the images that danced in her mind. Photographs of faraway places, forgotten birthdays, baby clothes. Voices drifted through the kaleidoscope of colours and faces. Mal, we haven't been to Japan or Iceland. I think I'd have remembered going there. Her mother, I love her so much, but it's forbidden. She deserves to know. Her dad, why can't you be more like your brother and work hard at school? Erin sighed, wiping her eyes on her sleeve. I don't know who to trust, and I'm sure Mum's lying about something. Taking a deep breath, she came to a decision. The first thing to do is to show Mal those photos. I must try and make sense of all this. I must, or I will go mad.